All right, hi everyone, good evening. Thank you so much for being here, whether you're joining us here in person or joining us online. Your presence and your engagement and your commitment to our community is what makes these conversations meaningful, so thank you so much. I'd like to begin by expressing our sincere gratitude to our hosts, Adam and the Community Church of Hope, for offering up this space for us to be able to have this gathering. We'd also like to thank our live stream volunteers, Billy Foster and his team from GayPHX.com, for helping ensure that members of our community who couldn't join us in person can still participate. For those of you that are joining us here tonight, just so you know, there are all gender restrooms right around this wall. There's a little hallway in case anybody needs that. We also have our ASL interpreters over here, Allison and Adam, on site to help make tonight's conversation accessible. Also, as a reminder, this event is being live streamed, so please keep that in mind during the program for any audience participation stuff. Tonight's town hall is designed to A, provide updates, B, foster open dialogue, and to create a space for community questions and discussion. We're gonna begin the overview here in a second with a little conversation about the Chapter 11 bankruptcy process from our president and treasurer. And then we're gonna follow that up with updates for the 2026 festival, parade, and events from the staff. And then we will move into questions that were submitted on the registration link that we have received already. And then we will conclude with about 20 minutes of live Q&A from in-person attendees. So without further ado, I'm gonna introduce Daniel, our board president, and Maury, our treasurer, to talk a little bit about the bankruptcy stuff.
Thanks, Mike. As Mike said, I'm Daniel Ekstrom. I am the Phoenix Pride Board of Director president. And then we will introduce Maury here in a little bit. But what Maury and I wanted to do is talk a little bit about the Chapter 11 bankruptcy piece of tonight's town hall. But first, we want to recognize that this type of thing is something that an organization, never wants to go through, and so we do know that this comes with stress for our community, stress for our staff and our board, our donors, our volunteers, and our stakeholders as well. So just note that we do understand the stress level that comes with this. But that's why we wanted to be as transparent as we can during the conversation. And we hope that you, if you don't get the answers you want, specifically regarding the Chapter 11 at the end of our town hall, please feel free to reach out to us. My email, you can email president@phxPRIDE.org. If you have any questions regarding it, I would be happy to answer any of that. But I'm going to start off by what Chapter 11 means, because there's been some conversation about what Chapter 11 is versus what Chapter 7 is. We'll switch to this mic. Yeah, that sounds better. Chapter 11 is the legal process designated to allow an organization to restructure while continuing operations, and that's currently where we are at now. Filing for Chapter 11 does not necessarily mean that the organization is closing. I will reiterate that. Our Chapter 11 status does not mean that Phoenix Pride doors are closing. This process provides us an opportunity to stabilize our finances and create a sustainable path forward. And that, along with the help from the trustee courts, they are helping us in the process of doing that now. I want to emphasize that us going into Chapter 11 was done with careful consideration, and we will address a couple questions later that have asked about that. But I also want to explain that this Chapter 11 was something that we believed offered us, as Phoenix Pride, the best path forward. Currently, our current operations, the organization is continuing to operate and serve its mission, even during the restructuring process. Our programs, our services are our top priority, and subject to court approval, we will be continuing to doing those services and bringing you the events that we have on a continuous basis. Again, I want to thank our sponsors, our volunteers, our community partners, those of you that are here today, those of you that are online, for your continued support, because it really has helped us through this transition. Do you want to kind of add anything before we kind of move forward with it?
Good evening. My name is Maury. I'm the interim treasurer for Phoenix Pride. We may have met at the last town hall. And regarding the Chapter 11, a lot of what Daniel said, I would just be repeating, but it's the kind of thing that can be shocking, especially now we've seen what's happening to some other organizations around the state and around the country. And when you hear the word bankruptcy, it automatically makes you think that it's over. And in the case of a Chapter 7, that would be true, but the Chapter 11 process gives us that opportunity to move forward, like Daniel said, and reshuffle and redesign how we do things in a way that allows us to move forward safely and in a fiscally responsible manner.
And the leadership here, our board of directors, our staff, we are committed to transparency throughout this entire process. We said this at our first town hall, but now that we are through the beginning stages of the Chapter 11, we kind of know what we can share, and there are things that we just can't share just based off of where we're at in the process. But we are committed to giving the community regular updates, whether that's through social media posts, whether that's on our newsletter, whether that's stuff that we post to our website. It could be some short, small statements. It could be some videos that the board and the staff make just to kind of give the community some updates. And although the community also needs to acknowledge that there are going to be some questions that we may not be able to answer, just based off of where we're at in the process, or we may not be comfortable asking, so then we may have to go back to our representation to make sure that we can. But we will always try to either be upfront about that, or we will say, we don't know at this moment, but we'll get back to you if we are able to. So just kind of give us a little bit of grace on that, because there are going to be some things that we just can't answer. And just in closing, like I said before, this hearing Chapter 11, as Maury said, hearing bankruptcy can be scary, but we are definitely committed to continuing what Phoenix Pride does, the mission that we serve. But obviously, the most important thing is the support from our community. The community is the reason why this organization has lasted as long as it's lasted. And I'm confident, and I know that the rest of the board and staff feel this as well. We are confident that with the support of the community here in Phoenix, throughout the state of Arizona, and even some places nationally that support Phoenix Pride, will help us get through this. And so I want to then pass the mic over back to our executive director, Mike, who will then now talk about our new revamped Phoenix Pride Parade and Festival.
Thanks, Daniel. So after the festival last year, I don't know how many folks were there, but we ran into Hurricane Priscilla issues at Steele Indian School Park, where our first couple days of setup were a little treacherous. We got the effects of the hurricane, and we were buried under about 5 inches of water at the beginning of the week, and we had to navigate all of that. So once the festival was over, we started thinking about possibly how we could change the festival, where we could move the festival to. We started having conversations with downtown Phoenix. We found out that Steel Indian School Park in October is finally, after 3 years, installing their submarine display, so half of the park is going to be closed anyhow. Hance Park is going to be under reseeding, grass reseeding, in the month of October. We explored Tempe Town Lake the year prior to possibly moving the festival there, but the way that they do their security plan costs were way too high for us. So we started talking to Downtown Phoenix Inc. and then the Vice Mayor's office, because downtown is her district, and kind of brainstormed ideas of what we could do downtown. We're still working on that. We have a location, we have a route. We just had the meeting today with Downtown Phoenix Inc. with like everybody that's involved in that, everybody from the Civic Center to the PD to the fire department to the other parks that are down there, and trying to figure out how we can make a route work in downtown Phoenix with road closures and everything else that's going on downtown, as well as the venue itself. So that's why we haven't released definitive information. I can tell you October 10th and 11th is when the weekend of the festival and the parade. We are planning Saturday, October 10th, to do a nighttime concert. During the day at the venue, which is the Arizona Center, they have their farmers market and they have all their exhibitors set up. So we wouldn't be able to do any exhibitor setup or anything on Saturday. So we're thinking once that closes down, we'll do a concert. And then Sunday morning, we'll do the parade, staging around Hance Park, coming south on 3rd Street, right up to the Arizona Center, and then destaging down Taylor and back, to the Hance Park area, and then opening the gates for the festival right after that. So that's kind of our plan as far as working out all of the permitting, all of that kind of stuff. We're still in the works on that. But as soon as we get that figured out, then we'll release it. We'll open up a ticket link. We're also looking at doing a hybrid event, and we'll talk a little more about it later, where portions of it will be free, portions of it will be ticketed, and we're wanting to do a lot more satellite events with businesses and venues around the area that people can walk to or shuttle to, so that it's an experience where you can move around and hop around and do different things at different venues. So that's kind of the thought process. I'm gonna let the rest of the staff talk because I've been talking way too much. And who do you want to talk about? You'll save yours, Stella? You're good. Landon? Thank you. This is Landon, our Director of Development.
Hello, everyone. So kind of to piggyback on what Mike has said, when we think about the health of the organization and the different portions of our community that are there and trying to create an event that hits all portions of our community, the estimates of here in the state of Arizona is that there's over 250,000 individuals that are a part of the LGBTQ plus community. So when you think about those numbers and what it would take to have a space where every single person felt like there was something for them, that becomes a great undertaking. And so the idea behind some of these satellite events is continuing to make sure those individuals who are a part of those communities have the ability to create events, and it filters back in and we're able to be that organization that continues to connect community to the spaces that allow them to be seen. Because I mean, just even thinking about someone who is a 50-year-old lesbian versus a 25-year-old gay man, there obviously is a place for them to be able to come out and enjoy themselves at Pride. But if we're specifically looking at something that would appeal to a lesbian individual or a sapphic individual, and if we're looking at something that would specifically go after that 25, that 17, that 50, 60, 70-year-old individual, a lot of times those things look completely different. And the best way financially to move forward to make sure that we are doing our due diligence to not only get us out of this situation with the Chapter 11 process, but make sure that we stay out of it as being responsible and allowing the great things that happen in our community, highlighting those things, allowing those things to continue, and not trying to compete with those different things. Yeah, so with the festival, that's kind of our idea, and I know personally, as Director of Development, I've been making contact and reaching out to different community organizations. If you are a community organization and you haven't heard from me yet, definitely please reach out, landon@phxPRIDE.org. I would love to hear from you, and I'm going to continue to reach out to make sure that not only the festival itself is the best event that we can produce, but we activate the entire city of Phoenix in a way that makes it so that individuals, no matter who you are, there's something for you. Well, I think at this point, going into some questions.
Yeah, we can go into the so we received a lot of questions that were submitted online. So like I said earlier, we're gonna discuss some of those first. One of the questions was, how can we have Pride if we're bankrupt? Well, I think we just kind of answered that with Daniel and Maury's opening talks about the bankruptcy. But I think it's really important to understand that we need community support and we need community stewardship as we move forward. We, on our end, are exploring ways to reduce expenses but keep quality as high as we can, adjusting budgets, collaborating with new venues and new partners like we just talked about. In 2021, coming out of COVID, we had a community survey. And the results of the community survey were people wanted more stages. They wanted bigger headliners. They wanted all of that kind of stuff, which is what we tried to do. And coming out of COVID and continuing, expenses just kept getting higher and higher and higher, and we weren't able to sustain it. And without the support, the attendance, that's kind of why we're in the situation that we're in, right? So we put out a community survey about 5 months ago. And it's very interesting. It's like 180-degree turn on the results of that, because now the community wants more grassroots. They want more local business, more local entertainment, more just like safe community feeling without all the hoopla. So that's what we're gonna try to provide with what we're gonna be doing at the festival in October. And hopefully it's what everybody wants. But also know every single one of our email addresses or ways to contact us are on our website. So if you have an idea, or if you know of somebody or a group that might want to partner and do an event as part of a satellite event for this year's festival and parade, please reach out, because we would love to have those conversations and talk about how we can partner and what we can do on that. But does anybody have any further question on like understanding how we can still move on with the bankruptcy proceeding that's happening. Everybody good? All right, the next question was, is Pride willing to change its structure to be more affordable to participants and vendors? I already touched on the fact that we're trying to bring the cost down as much as possible, do a hybrid event where part of it's free, and then there's also going to be ticketed portions and satellite events. We don't know exactly, what those pricing tiers are going to look like, but they will be substantially less than what they have been in the past. Once we get more information, like I said, we'll open up the ticketing link. We'll be as transparent as possible on that kind of stuff. And I am going to let Eva speak to the vendor portion of that.
Hi, everyone. Sorry. Hi, everyone. My name is Eva Galindo, she, her pronouns. I am the Director of Programs for phxPRIDE. What that means is that I handle all of our vendors and parade entries, food trucks for all of our events. So the biggest thing we've already talked about, we're moving from a 2-day to a 1-day. We're moving from Indian Steel to Arizona Center. Indian Steel Park, there is a lot of land to cover, which provides a lot of infrastructure, which requires a lot of labor and requires a lot of electricity. Being at Arizona Center removes all of that, so it significantly allows us to bring all of the prices down. Working at the Arizona Center also provides an opportunity for people to bring in their own tents, which is something that we always haven't been able to do in the past, which will be exciting for those organizations. But it also provides those that do not have tents to be able to still vend and be under protection so that they're still covered and they're not just in the middle of in the dirt under the direct sunlight. So being able to do that has allowed me to be able to completely cut down the cost of our vendors, but also open them up to a little bit more than just the typical 3 types that we've had minus the food. So in the past, it's always been the arts, commercial, and nonprofit, and those have kind of been the 3 that we've had. The arts, they were limited, and it went through a vetting process through a volunteer that's been with us, a local artist for many, many, many years. And then we had our nonprofits and our commercials. We will now have our arts, our locally queer, our commercials, and our nonprofit booths. So those will be 4 different. They'll be open completely. They are numbered because we only have certain spaces for certain for entries or that we're able to do. And then we'll still have food, obviously. So arts in the past was for $325 for something. Will now be $150. Nonprofits value, they kind of went from anywhere from 7 to, depending on how large they went, to like 10 by 30, could be close to 2 or a little over $2,000. Now will be $300 flat fee. Will be for 10 by 10 spaces. Locally, businesses and queer-led businesses will now be $400. And then commercials and corporations will pay $500, which will be the most. Our food trucks being 1 day, they're gonna have to be able to provide their own power and be able to provide their own tenting. So I'm really looking to work with people that have worked at the Arizona Center, but also have food trucks that can be able to have their own generation to be able to provide their own power. That allows us to really significantly drop those costs, another 50 to 60%, bringing them down to 450, and the max would be 1,900, and that would be like a 10 by 30, the largest food truck that's possibly out there. So that really helps us bring that down. I'm hoping that I've been doing the vendors for 8 years, and there's been a lot of different types of vendors that have come in and out, and they come from all over the country, not just here in Phoenix. So I'm really hoping that this opportunity, or that the cost cut allows them to return. Some of the ones that I have lost, allow them to please come back. I'm always open to have conversations, and those that have kind of sat on the fence because maybe it was a little bit too costly for them, they weren't going to be able to afford it. Hopefully now this has the opportunity so that you guys can join us, and it is more cost effective, and we can still have a turnout so that you guys can still enjoy it and be lucrative for those that are there making money as well. I think that was... For sure. So, honestly, we're gonna have to work together and figure out where you would best fit. If you feel that you are an artist and that's where you are, then I would suggest that you complete an artist application. If an individual if they have a business, whether it is a storefront, we are kind of looking that the storefront businesses are in those local queer businesses booths, so that that's just the type of the vendor that we're looking for in that area. But ultimately, we want to be able to work with you. So exhibitors at phxPRIDE.org, we can work together and talk about that. I'm going to make a note on that because that's a very good point, so that we could try to differentiate that. And if you have suggestions on how you would differentiate that as an artist versus a queer-led business, I'm open to what that text would look like.
Sorry, I have an Etsy page. I don't make a lot. I don't do a whole lot. I don't keep a large volume of stock for what I do. It's just chainmail artisan. And so it is interesting that you say that you're more focused on the storefront queer-led businesses for that area versus maybe businesses that could be more beneficial to the visualization to our community that don't have a lot of opportunity to be seen in that area.
Absolutely, and I wasn't saying that I was more focused on them. I apologize if that's how it came out. I was saying that in the local queer businesses, like I'm just gonna make an example, Twisted Botanist, they would be in the local queer businesses. I'm an artist, a drag artist. If I was gonna be there selling my artwork or something like that, I would probably consider myself to be under the artist. I was not necessarily saying that we would only want to work with those individuals that are in brick and mortar spaces. A lot of our vendors do not have brick and mortar spaces. A lot of our vendors, like I said, they work across the entire country. They travel across the entire country, living on the road many times. So that's not what I meant by it, and I apologize if that's how it came across.
No problem.
The next question, I think you and Landon are taking, right? How will Phoenix Pride continue engaging all parts of the LGBTQ+ community?
Yes, thank you. So for this question, I think about one, similar to what I was talking about earlier, that it takes all of us as a community working together, and a lot of times the spaces that are best suited to speak to different portions of our community, folks who are part of those kind of ancillary communities, they are able to speak to what is best. So part of being able to work with and engage all parts of the LGBTQ+ community takes that we're having those conversations. I also can admit for myself as Director of Development, one thing that I kind of took a look at the beginning of this year was how we engage, and not necessarily always being the individuals that are waiting for community to come to us, but being proactive and reaching out to community. I think a great example of that for me is this year's Pride Month calendar. I really spent a lot of time on making sure that not only events that were happening here in the greater Phoenix area were represented, but also events that were happening all throughout the state of Arizona, specifically events that were Pride events that happen. Phoenix, it's way too hot to be having a Pride festival during the month of June, but in places like Winslow, in places like the Navajo Nation, the Dene Pride, Navajo Nation Pride, there were different Pride events that were happening all throughout the state of Arizona, and we wanted to make sure that those things were highlighted. We'd like to continue, I know I would like to continue to highlight those things. I know that I've spoken with community members, I've been around when conversations have been had with communities when they've come to us and say that they appreciate how much more our social media seems to represent the events that are happening throughout the city. But part of that is, like I mentioned, us being proactive and reaching out to these different facets of the community. But as a staff here with Phoenix Pride, we're only 4 individuals, and we all have our specific things that we address as far as the operations of this organization, and we can't be everywhere at once, and we can't know everyone that's a part of the community, just the 4 of us. So it is important that there's always the conversation continuing to go. Mike earlier had an opportunity where he talked about the community response to our survey a few months ago was that the community wanted to see more grassroots type of organizing, more grassroots types of event. And grassroots, when I think about that, those types of things are not organization-led. Those types of things are a symbiosis between community and organization. When we put out calls for individuals to join on committees, when we put out calls and say that we are looking for board directors or individuals that are creating different events, those calls quite often go unheard, or we really get very few responses back. So the responses that we do receive, unfortunately, become the voice of the community. So when we look at the difference between 2021 versus 2026, when we're asking community for feedback on how we can engage these different portions of the community, those who speak up are the portions that we have to go off of when we're creating the events that we are doing. So I would encourage every single person who wants to see a Pride festival or a Pride organization that represents them, that they're coming to the table with us. If there's someone you know that is not currently being engaged, even if it's not a community that represents yourself, let us know who those individuals are, so that we can continue to reach out. I'm really excited for the satellite events that we will be doing this year, and just working through and having these conversations with the different individuals who will be producing them. It is leather and kink events produced by individuals who are deeply involved in leather and kink. It's individuals who are in the nightlife scene, who are producing events that really represent the different facets of the nightlife community. It is individuals who have kids and families, those individuals being the ones that really guide and direct what the programming looks like. And it's important that we work together in order to allow these things to happen and occur, because at the end of the day, we don't know what we don't know.
Thanks, Lyndon. The next question is, how can you connect with the deaf and hard of hearing community in Phoenix that need resources? So I'll pass that on to Stella.
Thank you. My name is Stella Kowalczyk. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Director of Community Engagement with Phoenix Pride. I have been on staff for almost 7 years, about a week shy of 7 years. Prior to that, I was a volunteer in accessibility for 8 years. First of all, I want to thank Adam and Allison for being here to provide interpreting for our deaf and hard of hearing community members. The first thing that I'm going to say as far as connection with our deaf and hard of hearing community here in Phoenix and abroad is one of the things that came out of our first town hall was a community advisory board. We call it on staff a CAB, but that community advisory board, that CAB, allows us to meet virtually once a month to be able to get feedback from the community about different things that are concerns, different things that those community members see as needs. And I would absolutely love to be able to create a CAB for accessibility for the deaf and hard of hearing community members, so that we can come together and really talk about resources, connectivity, really kind of chat about what is needed, ways to better Phoenix Pride, and what we can do to kind of come together, and I'm almost signing exactly what that sign is with my left hand, so excuse me, I'll try and sit on my hands. But to better align what those needs are. And I am actually going to send that out probably within the next week. But that's one of the things that I would really like to do, both for the deaf and hard of hearing community and accessibility in general. On the Phoenix Pride website, we have a resource page. If there are resources, ASL fluent doctors, therapists, specific interpreters that are sole proprietors, agencies, anything like that that we can put on our resource page that can be then given out when somebody has a need that can see that on our resource page, please send that. Accessibility at phxPRIDE.org. They're going to put that up so that you can see it, so you don't have to try and remember it. But accessibility at phxPRIDE.org, send that to me. I am happy to put that on our resource page. I am actually happy to create a dedicated section on our resource page specifically for deaf and hard of hearing resources. I know I have seen there's a fantastic member of our community that posts once in a while about ASL, I think it was an ASL fluent doctor that I saw. Anything like that, please send that to me so that I can put it on a resource page and create that specific section. I think that that would be fantastic. I'm going to be honest, I would also really suggest joining one of our board committees. Let your voice be heard at the board committee level. Let your voice be heard as a board member. Join us and absolutely put yourself at the table. Get a seat at the table and create that connectiveness with us here at Phoenix Pride. Those are fantastic ways to make sure that your voice, your hands are heard or seen. If you want to be a part of that, especially our Education and Outreach Committee, they plan activities. They go out and help with outreach. I go out and help with outreach. Join me. They're awesome ways to get dialed in and get connected. Again, accessibility at phxPRIDE.org. Please reach out to me. I would love to have those conversations. If there are events in the deaf and hard of hearing community that you want to have pushed out in our newsletter, on our social media channels, reach out, send that collateral to me, send that flyer to me. I can send it to Eva. We can get it sent out in our weekly newsletter. I can push it out in my volunteer database. We can push it out on our social media channels. We can get that information out. And we're happy to do that. If there are other thoughts about ways that we can be better connected, better ambassadors, better ways to get resources either out for you or resources on our resource page or other ways that we can be better dialed in, please reach out to me. Let me know. Accessibility at phxPRIDE.org. I'm all about it. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. The next question that came in is, what is the organization's plan to better represent the community moving forward? And I'm going to let our board member Jade take this.
Hi everyone, I'm Jade. I know some of my answer is a little bit similar to what I talked about earlier this year at our town hall, but I kind of want to expand on what everyone is talking about with our new satellite events and festival. I know in the past that I'm sure all of you have heard that we always reiterate, like, we're not a direct service provider. Some of these things that are really good and helpful for the community, we don't always do, because we are a little bit more of that general community group at times compared to some of the other groups and organizations that we have in town. And while that's true, we can't be everything. I also think that sometimes maybe that can come across and feel very like passive involvement. And so when we're talking about the satellite events and the different things that we're trying to work on doing this year and moving forward, I think that when I hear that and when we talk about that, it feels like it's being more active. We're not just saying we're not the expert in that part of the community, or that's not something we specialize in, but we're trying to look for ways where we can partner with those experts and the different community members and different groups in town. And when it comes to like what Stella was saying with education and outreach, I chair that committee. I actually started as a volunteer for a year on that committee, and then when I joined the board, I became the chair, and I've been doing that for a couple of years now. One of the things that we've been really trying to embody as a committee is how can we be more creative with the events that our committee does. We focus a lot on trying to do events that are different types of events, like different ways to interact with each other. We're trying to rotate into different types of settings, and we're always scheduling events that are all ages. They're family friendly. All of our events are free and a little bit more fun and creative. You know, we've done poetry slams, we've done talent shows hosted at SO Coffee. We're trying to incorporate different unique things like that for everyone throughout the year. So it's, you know, a little bit of bias, but we're the best committee and we do the most fun stuff, I think. But those are the things that we really try and focus on, and in those events, that's where we've also been pulling in different community partners to highlight them. You know, we did an event at the Royale, and we were able to bring some of our past grant recipients to be vendors at that event. It was free. It was a free event. The vendors didn't pay anything, but it was just another way to highlight those organizations that, as you most of you probably know, the last couple of years we have not been able to do the grant program because of some of these financial strains that we've been having. But that's been one way that our committee has been trying to bring in those different organizations and still highlight them at these different events. And then I'll let Mike speak a little bit more to the grants and the different ways that we've partnered with those organizations.
Yeah, sure. So three ways that we are able to also connect with the community is through our community foundation, which is our scholarship program, our community grants program, and our partnership grants program. The scholarships, we just finished the cycle. We are fortunate enough, I feel like I should explain this as well. If you know what restricted funds are, that's when when a donor makes a donation but restricts it to a specific program. Our scholarship program is our program that we get the most restricted donations for. Those funds get earmarked. They get sent to the Arizona Community Foundation, which is the foundation that manages our scholarship fund. And then we go through the scholarship process, the review committee, and then we award the scholarships. This year, even going through bankruptcy, we are going to be awarding $70,000 in scholarships, which is, you know, connecting with our LGBTQ plus and allied students that are the future of our community, right? Our partnership grant program is a little bit different than our community grant program in that the scholarship grant, or I'm sorry, the partnership grants are where organizations can come in, volunteer at an event or in the office or something that is going on that we need the extra hands for. And we were able to monetize those volunteer hours into grant funding for that organization. And then there's the community grants program, which unfortunately we had to put on hold because of the financial situation. But over the course of the inception of these programs, Phoenix Pride has from proceeds from festivals and events has given back over $1.7 million to the community. And I think it's really, really important to understand where some of those community grant funding goes to, right? Like, we know our organizations like 1 in 10, and I'm just saying that because you're sitting right in front of me, right? We know, Aunt Rita's Foundation, which have gotten grants for programming and things that they've done. But what you may not know is like how diverse some of these grants are. We've given to the Southern Arizona Senior Pride so that they could further the development of their Community Cares program, which pairs homebound LGBTQ plus older adults with trained LGBTQ volunteers to share mutual interests, engage in home visits, phone calls, that kind of thing, right? That's important. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't see the impact reports. We put them up on the website, but sometimes people don't delve that deep, so I think it's important to know that. AZ Typo has gotten a grant which covered the cost of 25 name change grants for Arizona youth and young adults and adults who identify as transgender, right, or gender expansive. The Florence Immigrant and Refugee Rights Project received a grant to help funding legal and social services for their adult immigrants in detention who identify as LGBTQ+. The Phoenix Indian Center for support of their Two-Spirit powwows. The Deaf Abuse Network and Education Advocacy to provide a series of workshops to focus on connecting with interpreters to provide gender-neutral education. So, these are ways that we are reaching the community that a lot of people don't know about. So if you'd like to learn more about that or see some of these impact reports, I mean, there's been hundreds of grants that have been given out to amazing programs. Reach out, because we're really, really happy to share that kind of information. Are you sick of hearing me talk yet? Yeah.
All right. Our next question that we had submitted was, in the previous town hall, you mentioned that the city of Phoenix requires police to be at the festivals because alcohol is present and sold. But in the publicly available special events liquor license application, it doesn't state that police are required. It gives the option of private security. What's the truth here? Back to you, Mike.
Oh, so you did get to hear from me again. So I'm glad that question was brought up, because it's, when you do a special event, especially an event as large as like the Pride Festival and the parade, yes, there's the special event liquor license that goes along with it, but there's also the fire assembly license that goes along with it. There's also the streets and road closure permit that goes along with it, as well as several other permits. So the special event liquor license, and I don't remember saying that in the last hall, or maybe it got misunderstood. The special event liquor license, they do ask for your overall security plan. The overall security plan is formulated with the special event liquor license, the fire assembly, the road closures, right? So everybody gets together in one room. It's the fire department, it's the police department, it's Homeland Security, it's the Parks Department, it's all of these folks, right? And we talk about, because safety is the most important thing at our events. We want our attendees, especially with us as LGBTQ plus being a targeted community, safety is the most important thing, and we know what can happen. Somebody could drive through the parade route. Back in 2024, we had the threat of somebody bombing the parade, right? Had we not been working with these organizations, not working with folks that can dive deeper into what's going on in the dark web and finding out things that a normal, like, I'm gonna hire a private security person to be able to find those things, who knows what would have happened, right? So yes, the liquor license doesn't specifically require police involvement, but when you add all of those factors together and you put a security plan together that's going to guarantee that every single person that is at that event is not going to be harmed, yes, there is going to be police involvement. But I want to make it really, 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 really clear that the off-duty police officers that we hire are through our Phoenix Police Department LGBTQ liaison. His name is Trey Sewing. He's a member of our community. He runs the advisory board for the police department for the LGBTQ plus community. Our off-duty coordinator, Samantha Pimentel, is a member of our community. She's the one that actually hires and puts the schedules together for these LGBTQ and allied officers that are going to be working our event and want to work our event. And they are not there to arrest anybody. They are not there to detain anybody. They are not there to interfere with anybody. They are there for everybody's safety. They're there to protect our community. They're part of our community. They're proud to be there. They're proud to protect us, okay? That's very, very important because it's for years and years and years, it's been 50-50, no police at Pride. Yes, police at Pride. How do I feel safe at Pride if there's no police there? How do I feel safe at Pride if there are police there? So it's important to understand that the police are not there to do anything to you as a spectator or somebody coming to the event other than to try to protect you. In the 8 years that I've been executive director for Phoenix Pride, we've had 2 incidents reports. One incident report because somebody came back to get their car after hours and drove through. They went the wrong way in the parking lot. I'm assuming they probably went out somewhere, came back after everything was gone, and drove straight through our admission lanes. And obviously, that was an issue. And the other one was a trespass to somebody that knew that they were not welcome at the event for particular reasons, but decided to show up anyhow. And it was a very simple walk up. Hey, you're not supposed to be here. It's a trespass. Those are the only 2 incidents reports. No one's been arrested. No one's been detained. None of that. So I think it's just really, really important to understand that. And this question stated that the liquor license does not say that police are required, but there are 4 spots. There's a spot for how many off-duty officers are you gonna have, how many private security are you gonna have, how many staff that is gonna be helping with security are you gonna have, and how many volunteers are you gonna have that are gonna be checking IDs and wristbanding and that kind of stuff. So that's all part of the application process. So I hope that explains it a little better.
And I'm going to let Jade talk a little bit more about one of our committees to go along the same avenue of safety.
So one of the other committees that I chair is the Law Enforcement Advisory Committee. I have been chairing that for almost a year and a half, I think. And I will be the first to admit, and I think we've all on the board and the staff have a similar experience, that this committee and the things that we can talk about and focus on is often very emotionally complicated for people. I have a lot of volunteers that have joined the committee over the time that I've been on the committee because they have really valuable experiences to share and bring for us and our events, but it's also very hard for them to interact with these conversations. And at times when we're talking about interacting with the officers that support our events and doing things with them, or having some of them join some of our committee meetings, it's very hard because they do have experiences that I don't personally have, where they have had very scary, inappropriate, discriminatory experiences with officers. So it's very heavy. But I think it's a really important committee that is really valuable. And in my time, we've done a couple of really important things. We revamped, the first thing we did was we revamped some of our policies for festivals when it comes to involvement of officers in the parade and what that looks like and how they interact throughout the festival. And then after that, we had a couple of different local departments reach out and join some of our meetings. They've shared internal policies with us that we as a committee reviewed and provided feedback on. And then we have talked about in different capacities doing different events to help increase community safety in terms of like talking about defense classes, or just talking about not even just physical defense, but just how to navigate spaces and have situational awareness. And we've talked about these different things, but we are a small committee, and because of the material, we have not kept people very long. We have a lot of people that come and join and leave for different reasons, some of them for personal scheduling, whatever, you know, you have. But throughout the 18 months I've been on it, we've had between maybe 3 to 10 people. In the last 6 months, I don't have a very large, consistent group joining. So we talk about different things that we'd like to do, but when it's just me and one other person like talking about ideas, it doesn't always feel comfortable because it's not a well-rounded perspective. And what that resulted in is last year leading up to our festival, we wanted to schedule an event, a Coffee with a Cop event, where we were specifically inviting the officers that were going to be supporting our festival before the festival, so that people could come and kind of meet them and get to know them and hopefully build a little bit more of that felt sense of safety and connection by seeing them and speaking to them before they were at the event. But at that time, our committee was pretty small, and our group thought that it was a good idea, but when we got mixed feedback, it was an important moment for us to pause. And even though some people said they felt like it would be a helpful event and they wanted to see it, we still had a lot of feedback that people didn't feel like that was what was going to be helpful and supportive. So we canceled it. And I think those are the types of conversations that if we had more of a well-rounded, diverse group talking about these things and navigating these conversations and exploring those topics, it would maybe hopefully feel a little bit more comfortable and relevant to the community and our events and what that looks like. But that is a struggle, and that's something that, especially since we've lost some volunteers since then, has put a pause on some of the things that we do in that committee. So if this is something that you are open to meeting about virtually and joining these meetings with us, it's something that we're actively talking about and trying to address, but we just don't feel comfortable doing some of those things when it's not a well-rounded perspective from our committee.
All right, thank you, Mike and Jade, for that. And so now we're going to kind of go into another section of some of the submitted questions that talks about kind of like leadership development and organizational support. And one of the questions that was submitted to us earlier was, what does Phoenix Pride need from the community to help with Phoenix Pride events? I believe Stella is going to help us answer that.
Thank you, Daniel. So like any nonprofit, the biggest need when putting on an event is people, bodies. Volunteers are what make any event happen. Like Landon said, we are a staff of 4. and it's not us. We can try, but it's definitely not us, especially when we're talking about the festival, the parade, Rainbows Festival, that kind of thing. There's just no way that we can do it. We have volunteers that come to an event, whether that's the Pride event, the parade, even one-off events, which is what I call them. There's definitely a need. Typically it's 4 to 6 hours. That's kind of a typical range for a volunteer time commitment. And that's, you know, that's kind of what those are the shoulders that we kind of stand on. Kind of going back for a second to the deaf community and how we can kind of maybe sort of come together and engage a little bit more with the deaf community, especially at Rainbows Festival and at the Pride Festival. We have an information booth where people come to ask questions, and there's a great opportunity at our information booth to have somebody who is deaf there to answer questions for other deaf community members. We staff that with somebody who is ASL fluent, but to have somebody there that is deaf to answer questions for other deaf and hard of hearing community members would actually be fantastic. So that's a great opportunity. So if anybody that's in the deaf and hard of hearing community that wants to come and be a part of that, I would absolutely love that. I've had it a couple times way back in the past, and would love to see that again. We also have folks that are looking for kind of general, a greater volunteer engagement. Those are typically our committee managers. Those are the people that kind of oversee a specific area, whether that area is admissions or volunteer check-in or entertainment or the kids space, or I can keep rattling off a bunch of areas. But if that's something that you are interested in, maybe you have experience in admissions in the past, maybe you have experience in exhibitors in the past, maybe you have experience in some other area and you've recently moved here, or you're looking to get dialed in, please reach out. They're gonna put on the screen the email address, but it's volunteers@phxPRIDE.org. Please reach out and let's have that conversation about getting, is this still on? Okay, I was just checking. I'm kind of soft-spoken as it is, and so I get told that a lot. But please reach out and we can definitely have that conversation. I would love to talk to you. The other conversation that I have about ways to get plugged in for events is employee resource groups, ERGs as we typically call them, because employee resource group is too long to say, so ERG is a lot shorter. But they're organizations, companies that have a group of people that want to come and be involved. One of them, I just had this conversation last week. We have a group from a company that's going to come and decorate our float. The float that goes down the parade route and has our royalty. Our Miss Phoenix Pride is here tonight. But it's the one that our royalty gets to stand on, sit on, whatever they end up doing this year. And they come down, we supply the decorations, the ERG supplies the creativity. And they come down, it takes 2 or 3 hours or so, and it's a great opportunity for a group from a company to come down and have fun. That's another way to get plugged in. There's other opportunities. But if that's something that you want to do and volunteer at a Phoenix Pride event, specifically at our Pride event, feel free to reach out. It's set up for this year, but there's always next year. So there are different opportunities, different ways to get involved. Typically, if you are just a person, maybe you have a family member that you want to come down and get involved with, the first step is you always need to fill out a volunteer application. All the information about volunteer opportunities, whether it's the parade, It's the festival, it's the Rainbows Festival, which is in the spring, or maybe it's a one-off event that we have going on that I just need to put out a call because we need a half a dozen volunteers or a dozen volunteers or whatever. The first step is to fill out a volunteer application. You can reach out at volunteers@phxPRIDE.org, and I can send you anything that you need. Or if you have questions, that's the place to start as well. Can I answer any questions tonight from those of you that are here? If you are a volunteer, if you have volunteered in the past, if you have done anything to help support any of our events, thank you, thank you, thank you. I cannot say thank you enough, because you are why the events work.
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
I think too, in addition to kind of what Sylla was talking about as far as volunteers, and what we need from community is community showing up and not and assuming positive intentions. Us as a staff of 4 individuals, I could go down the list and think about like what we do on a day-to-day basis. It's me as director of development. It's not just, hey, I'm collecting sponsors. It is, and I'll talk a little bit about this because the sponsorship question is later, so I'll save my answer for that. But there's so much more that goes into my day-to-day job than answering emails from corporations who want to sponsor us. There's so much more that goes into the pageants than just throwing a pageant together and crowning someone at the end of the day. I know with Eva as our director of programs, her job isn't only just working with the vendors that come to our events, that are at our festivals. Her job isn't only working with the individuals who are in our parade. It is the job where she is working with different corporations when they ask us to have a conversation and show up and do a presentation about the LGBTQ plus community, and we go out and spend time and talk to those individuals. I know that she spends a lot of time making sure that students that are in our community know about the resources that are available through our scholarship program and how we can make sure that every school possible that knows about it and those students are aware of it. I know Stella does more than just talk about the interpreters and talk to the ASL interpreters that are at our events. She's working to figure out different ways that we can engage community. She's working to figure out different ways that we can come together in a way for individuals, whether they may be deaf or hard of hearing, whether they may be differently abled, and even just maneuvering around the festival. So we are 4 individuals that are trying and thinking about all the things that we can do, but if community comes to us with the honest expectation of, hey, you guys may not have thought about this, maybe this is somewhere where we can focus. What does that look like? A lot of times when I'm personally talking to community members, and maybe some of them, maybe individuals here in the room or online, my question always will be, what does good look like to you? Because a lot of people, us included, can talk about what we don't like about the festivals, what we don't like about the events, or what the organization may not be doing. But too few times do we hear from community what good looks like. So if there's something that you need to see or want to see, what does good look like to you? It's very easy in today's age to sit on social media and talk about what you hate. But as a community, bringing us together is going to involve talking about what inspires you. What are the things about community that you love, and how can Phoenix Pride bring those things together? What we need is that from you.
Daniel, can I just say something real quick? I just want to piggyback off of what Landon said for a second. Almost everything that I do in accessibility, with the exception of the ASL interpreters, which were already on the stages, well, they were already on 2 stages when I started 13 years ago. They are now on all stages. They are now on all stages because of community feedback. Because somebody came to me when I was a volunteer, I was the co-manager of accessibility at the time, came to me and said, why are there not ASL interpreters in Erotic World? And I said, you know what, you're right. There should be ASL interpreters in Erotic World. The next year, there were ASL interpreters in Erotic World. There is now the quiet zone for neurodiverse individuals. That exists because of community feedback, because somebody from the community emailed and said, and emailed over, message actually over social media and said, why doesn't this space exist? It existed the next year. It existed on a bare bones, grassroots level because it was not in the budget. And we put it together on a shoestring with the help of Waymo. And the senior cooling area was created for the exact same reason, because somebody said, why doesn't this exist? And because of help with AARP, that area existed, and it's existed, that whole, both of those spaces have existed since then. Same thing with the mobility shuttle and getting people from point A to point B and all around Steel Indian School Park and from the parade and to Steel Indian School Park on Sundays, because the community said, why doesn't this exist? If you don't ask the questions and say, how can we make this possible? Why doesn't this exist? We don't know about it. So community feedback is so, so important. I can't climb Kilimanjaro, but I might be able to climb Camelback. But I don't know what isn't working or needs to be fixed or what we can potentially do better if you don't tell me, if you don't tell Eva, if you don't tell Mike or Landon or Daniel or any of us that are sitting up here. I might not be able to make it happen tomorrow, but by God, I will do everything I can to make it happen.
Thank you, Stella and Landon. Our next two questions I'm going to read, and they kind of go hand in hand because they talk mostly about board engagement and diversity of the board. So the first question is, why is the board not more diverse, and what is the board doing to engage more diverse board directors? And then the second question is, what is the process for someone to join the board? Why are there so many barriers to entry? So I'm gonna let Jonathan kind of talk about the diverse piece of it, and then we're gonna kind of piggyback a little bit on the rest of the questions on there.
I think that Stella and Landon both teed us up for the question perfectly. We are a volunteer-run board, and everybody, we're missing one person today for personal matters, but we can't get anything done without volunteers. From Stella's team to the volunteer board members. So we want we want our board to look as diverse as our community does, and we don't expect our community to do all that work for us. We want to meet you halfway. We want to meet you where you are. We want to meet diverse groups. We want to again see those people we see in our community as part of the board, but we want to meet you where you're at. But Landon made a comment earlier about symbiosis, and then Stella made a comment about just bringing community together. You got to meet me somewhere, right? So come out, tell us where you're going to be, tell us what events are going on, and we will meet you there. We want to meet where our community is, but we need that community involvement to join the board. And we start with the community. We have different committees that you can get a sense of, get a sense of what floats your boat, what you're interested in. But help meet us somewhere that we can meet you, we can learn about you and your needs of your diverse community, and we can have a more diverse board.
And I want to kind of piggyback on that too. Earlier, Landon made a comment about us putting out calls to actions and getting responses from people, and those people that have responded are the voices at the table. And we have, over the last few years, put out calls to people to join our committees, to join our board. And the people that show up to do that are the people that are sitting at this table or that have their terms expired last year or the year before. And so when you're seeing the people that are making the decisions, or you're seeing the people that are at the events, or you're seeing the people that are representing the organizations, it's the people that answered that call. And so while we can say until we're blue in the face that we want diversity, that we want to engage the underrepresented people that feel that they aren't represented on our board, we need you to come to us and say, I want to be a part of that. And without that, we can't, we're responding to the people that are responding to us. And so I hope in the next couple of days when we do release that link on how you can join one of our committees, how you can join our board, that those people that feel they're not their voice isn't at the table, that they come to the table. We have always said that there's a seat for everybody, especially on the board of directors, and there is, and we want those seats filled. We want an overabundance of people that want to join our board so that we can say at the end of the day, what Phoenix Pride is doing is its representation for the community. And our community is so vast, our community is so large, and it's such a melting pot of different people, of different thoughts, of different ways of thinking, and we need that, especially now going through this process of restructuring, because we are restructuring a lot of what we're doing. We need those voices. And then how the process for someone to join the board, and it's been this way since I started about 6 years ago, and I know that it was the same way a few years before that. But normally, how the process works, if somebody wants to join the board, we ask them to join one of our board committees for at least 3 months. And the reason why we do that is because we want to ensure that those people, at the end of those 3 months can meet the time requirement. We as a board meet once a month, but here more recently we've met a lot more than that. But normally on normal times it's once a month. But then there's other events that we have to attend to. So when we ask you to be a part of the committee, it's because we want to ensure that you are committed, and how you show you're committed is, completing those 3 months. But, if there are people in our community that we feel, okay, they can, they know what they're doing, they've been on other boards, they've done work on other nonprofits, we're happy to have those conversations with those people to then maybe try to fast track them onto the board. But, the process is in place because we want to ensure that at the end of the day, what you're signing up for. That it is a volunteer board. That we are more we're not on the everyday operations like the staff is. We're more of a governing board. And we hope that by the end of those 3 months, you decide that is something that you want to do. And also, a lot of people, when they hear that the board has a give-get, a monetary give-get, they sometimes feel like they can't meet that. Conversations can be had with the board on how that can happen. For example, this year, in years past, I've given a certain amount every month. And then I've tried to do like an event throughout the entire year to raise the remaining of my give-get. Those are things that you can do. You don't have to donate every month to the organization. You can, do an event that gets your entire give-get. But, we definitely want to work with people that feel maybe the monetary piece are holding you back. That's something that we don't want that to happen. And so that if you can't raise that money, if you can't do that, everybody on the board can figure out how we can do that. But we don't know that until you express that to us. Is there anybody else on the board that wants to kind of?
I think it's important too that Jade, over the past 2, maybe 3 years, hasn't donated anything out of pocket. She's created fundraisers and to her entire give-get. I've dressed as in drag for the last 3 years, for better or for worse, to make that give-get. And every member of the board, every member of the board and the staff is at those events to help fundraise together, and we are another sense of community in that thought. But I want to make sure that everybody, we've gotten that question a lot of how do I raise that money. It's a community team building idea of collecting those funds, so please don't let that be our hurdle.
I know we're getting close to time, but I just really want to speak to the barriers to entry part and what Jonathan just brought up. I think, like Daniel's saying, especially right now, there's obviously a lot happening with the organization, and there's a lot that needs to be corrected. To a certain extent, like, we do need to have that barrier to entry of people need to be willing to be involved, because that's just what's happening right now. So if someone can't commit to coming to a 1-hour meeting once a month virtually, then how do we know they're going to come to all of our board meetings or support some of these events? So to a certain extent, I think that is important. However, we are always flexible with each other. We have plenty of board directors throughout the time I've been on the board that have different types of jobs where they travel, they're out of state a lot, or they have to join virtually, or we reschedule a board meeting so that we can all be there together. So we're not rigid, but we are looking for engagement. And when it comes to the give-get specifically, that has been something that's been a big concern for a lot of people. And I know I'm not the only one that does events every year. You know, the things that I do on education and outreach, my mental health event, the events that Jonathan does with his Turnabout show, some of us will bring in different items that are then used for raffles or auctions. We've all been always supportive of sharing that support, including each other in those events and sharing those funds, if you want to call it that, because I don't think any of us has ever looked at it as like, that's only for you to raise. It's always a group effort, and I don't think I've done an event where at least one or two directors didn't show up to help either in the planning and the preparation or the actual completion of the event. Same thing with the staff. So I just wanted to say, like, those things are not barriers. We're always willing to be flexible and work on that because we're a community, we're a team.
Sorry, I just wanted to say one thing just because I feel like I have a little bit of a unique perspective out of everyone up here. I'm out of all of us, multiple of us has served on the board on the staff, but out of all of the staff, I was the longest tenured on the board and now have spent half my time. So about 9 years altogether between staff and board. And one thing that's always important about board service is that everyone has wealth to give. Wealth is not just financial. Wealth sometimes is just the wealth of time that you have in order to give. Wealth sometimes is the Rolodex, I'm aging myself by saying that, but the Rolodex that you have of individuals that you can connect back to the organization. The original question was, why is the board not more diverse? Almost 10 years ago, I was someone who wrote almost that exact same comment on social media. There's someone in this room right now who messaged me and he was like, you have a lot to say on social media, but put your actions where your words are. And that's why I'm here today. It is going to take all of us as a community coming together to make these events work and this organization work. Just as individuals who are in the community have their own things that are going on in their lives, their own struggles. I know we hear sometimes that the festival tickets, it's a barrier to entry. The same struggles and issues that you personally may be going through, as an organization, we are seeing those same things. Individuals that come to the table to sit down, you all have something to provide. It's just really thinking about what it is that you have to provide. Like Jade said, there's many individuals who have come through this board who have different ways that they could support the organization. So don't count yourself out before having the conversation.
I forgot to mention, if you can't join the board, but you do want to be involved, we also have a governance committee that meets once a month, and part of what that committee does is identifying for the organization, how do we find people that could be a good fit for the board and bringing that to the organization. So even if you can't commit, you can still be a part of that process.
Okay. All right, so the next questions are looking towards the future. The first, these two questions are very similar and kind of what I'm gonna talk about. First question being, how do you plan to keep corporate influence and rainbow washing out of Pride? And the second question is, are you committed to only allowing corporate sponsors that actively support community and do not fund Republican hate groups? So when it comes to sponsorship, I kind of want to walk you through the process. First, I want to say everyone who's offered to sponsor Phoenix Pride has not been a sponsor of Phoenix Pride. There absolutely have been individuals who have offered to give us money that we've said no to. And those individuals, generally speaking, it's going to be because the values and how those companies show up on a day-to-day basis does not align with our community. I personally have a conversation. Every single sponsor that is a sponsor of our events, I personally have conversations. I personally walk them through that process. And those situations are handled a whole lot different than the exhibitors that are general exhibitors at our events. I say that all to say also that individuals and companies that you see at the event, just because it's like a Fry's or a Blue Cross Blue Shield and they're large corporations, doesn't mean that they have joined our event as a sponsor. In many cases, and even with our sponsors, the individuals who are guiding that conversation are not someone who's in an office in a city that is thousands of miles away from our community. On most cases, those individuals are people who live here in the community, who are part of what Stella was talking about earlier, those employee resource groups, and they reach out and they say, you know what? This is where I work. I'm a part of this community, and it's important to me that where I work and where I spend my time every day is that it shows up for the community that I'm a part of. I would say 90% of sponsors, if they're not, that I have conversations with, if they're not someone who's a part of our community, they have a story of why it's important for them to sponsor our events. Because it may be a family member, it may be a child, it may be a sibling, whatever their reasons are, these are individuals who are coming together. So when you see someone who's part of a large company and they're walking down the float, none of those people were required to be there. A lot of those people, they are excited to be there. They're looking forward to it. There's one corporation in general where we had to say no. Like, things have happened, how you show up in community right now doesn't show that you align with the mission, values, and vision of our organization. So we have to say no. And the amount of feedback that came from local community members who were a part of that company, it speaks to, again, these are our community members who are trying to make sure that where they work and spend every day is a part of the event and things that are important to them. And again, just like I said, that just because it's a national corporation doesn't mean that they're a sponsor of the event. It is sometimes, a lot of times, a local ERG who is spending the $400,000, $700,000 to join, as opposed to our sponsors, which spend significantly more. In 2025 for our festival, we had 204 different organizations who tabled at the festival. Of those 204, only 47 of them were sponsors. So that's a little less than a quarter of the individuals that were actually sponsors. But what also leads me to a secondary point of exhibitor fees and things that it takes to put on an event, because events are expensive to put on. Those 47 individuals, they accounted for 62% of what was paid into the organization in order to make this event possible. That's not to say that we should only rely on sponsors. That's to say that if we are going to remove the reliance of sponsors, what that is going to take is community involvement. What that is going to say is that one of the things that we're doing as we go through this process of realigning the organization is that's why we're going to a smaller event. Because one, we're hearing from community that you want, that's what you want. But this year, in order to make sure that we were an organization that lasts for another 45 years, we did significant cuts to our budget. The festival alone, in 2024 to 2025, we cut by 25%. Obviously, that was not enough, so we cut the budget this year by 75% in order to make it possible. And so what that means is looking for creative ways, those satellite events that we're having, so we're not spending the money that goes into having 9 different areas at the festival. What that looks like is doing an event in a place where electricity is one of our most expensive costs for an event of the scale and the size that we were doing it. By doing it at the Arizona Center, that's one cost that we really don't have to think about because it's already set up to be a place where it is activated when the sun is up and when the sun is down. those relationships that we do, and the idea that because we have these sponsors giving checks to us that they get to determine what our event looks like, I can say for myself specifically that since I've been in this role since 2021, there's never been a sponsor that has said, you need to do this in order for us to give you money. The conversation always has been, what else can we do, and find different ways. And usually the only barrier to that is the fact that we are not a direct service provider. And so I point them in the direction of the organizations that are direct service providers so that they have the ability to support those services that are needed throughout the community. While that being said, also, if there are sponsors who have felt like they didn't align with how we run the event and they've decided to make it not part of the event anymore, no one's ever had that conversation with me, but I always welcome that conversation because I think it is important for us to kind of figure out what works for all parties involved. No, I think that's all I have for that.
And then our last questions that were submitted by folks online before we get to your questions in the audience was, who made the decision to continue once the organization fell behind financially? How does Phoenix Pride maintain financial stability moving forward? And what oversight processes are in place?
Multi-part question. So being the last question, I tend to be a little wordy, and everybody up here has been a beneficiary of that as we've gone through this process, so I'll try to keep it to a minimum. For the first part, who made the decision to continue once the organization fell behind financially? It was a board decision, and it was our last decision to file bankruptcy, not our first. We went through several months of analysis. We engaged with multiple legal counsel for their opinion on what our options could be, how does this look like, or what does this look like moving forward? What can we do to avoid filing bankruptcy? Going back to the very first question, how can we do this if we're bankrupt? What are our options? Well, Chapter 11 gives us the opportunity, as we said, to move forward in a way that we can continue these kinds of things that everybody wants to see. So how do we maintain financial stability moving forward? Well, they just talked about some of that. Budget cuts. We are completely revamping the budget, and everything's on the table. We have to do that in order to maintain, in light of, attendance at the events and the loss of sponsorships. Those are our primary sources of revenue. If those go down, our expenses have to go down. And so we have made a concerted effort to reduce what we're spending and spend what we do spend in a fiscally responsible way to get the best for our money. Oversight processes, well, this is a court-led process. We have oversight by the court and a trustee. We have to provide our budget to them and monthly updates with what does your cash flow look like? What did you spend it on? Why did you buy that? We have to explain all of that as we go through this process to restructure and make sure that we are financially sound. And it's important, I think, to remember that filing Chapter 11 doesn't absolve us of the debts. Part of the process, part of the structure is to become financially successful again and to make good on those debts. So part of our process and the budget is to start repaying our creditors. So just because we filed bankruptcy doesn't mean we washed our hands of any of it. We know that there's a responsibility, and part of that responsibility is to file Chapter 11 to try to pay them instead of just filing Chapter 7 and closing our doors. So I think in those respects, we're really trying to make sure that we survive and provide the kinds of things that you want to see, that the community needs and wants, and love, for that matter. And that's primarily why we're doing this. And it's just, It's uncomfortable and nobody wants to talk about it, but it's the best move and the best path forward for the organization as a whole.
Thank you, Maury. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take any questions that you all have here in the audience, and Jade's going to walk around with a microphone. So if anybody has questions, just raise your hand and we can get to you. If you want to just speak as clear as you can into the microphone.
Hello. I'll stand so you can see me. My name is Lorenzo. So from my understanding, I know that the deadline for people to file, for creditors to file their claims is coming up pretty soon. So what happens if what they file is like outside of what your projections are for the rest of the year? Like, what is the backup plan if you know that you're not going to be able to pay back those debts before your deadline?
And Mike may have some specific information about that. He's met with the trustee and our attorneys with regard to the process for the repayments. Mike, do you have anything specific that came up in that? Yeah, we're still in the beginning stages of that, so we're about to provide our initial budget and plan moving forward. So we don't have some of those answers yet. That'll happen later this month for us.
So my question actually is for you, Jade. For the committee that works with Phoenix PD, how are community members kept safe? Since for many community members, especially BIPOC and trans members, this is akin to asking victims to work with their abusers.
Yeah, so it's not specifically Phoenix PD. We've had Phoenix PD join at times. We've also had the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department join. Those have been one-offs that have been specific to, like, if we're reviewing one of their policies or if we're talking about a partner event. So that does not happen consistently. And that is something that is like planned and prepared for, and we talk about that. But otherwise ongoing, it's just our committee members.
Hi, I wanted to review what you said about the festival. You mentioned that there's ticketed and non-ticketed events. You kind of went through that pretty fast at first. Could you repeat the plan? Is it still pretty much the same, that the festival itself is ticketed and everything else is generally
No.
free?
Portions of the festival are going to be free to everybody, and then there'll be like satellite so for example, the free portion where all of the exhibitors and food areas will be free. If you want to get into the dance area, that may be a ticketed portion. We don't know what that is yet, so we're trying to figure that out. We're trying to do different venues within a venue, and we don't know which. It's going to depend on some of the proposals coming back to us as what those costs are going to be, how we're going to do the ticketing. Does that make sense? Yeah. Correct. There's a free portion, and then if there's going to be certain areas that if you want to get into, then you either have to show that you have a ticket for that, or purchase like a wristband to get in type situation. Does that make sense? Okay.
This is, I guess, kind of like a follow-up to my previous question, but I know that you have to file your reorganization plan by August 26th. So are you going to be like really, how transparent or open do you plan on being with what that reorganization of your finances actually looks like? Like, is that going to be something you're going to be outwardly sharing with the community, or is that going to be behind closed doors?
I think that the answer to that is we'll share everything that we're able to. Again, we're governed and working in coordination with our legal counsel. I don't know all of the specifics about what can and can't be shared by us versus what should go out through counsel. But I would have to say that we will share everything that we can.
And this was not for that question, so this was kind of going back to your question, but just a general statement that typically when we produce the Pride Festival, we're looking at that festival production timeline 9 to 12 months in advance. I know that there's a lot of information that typically by this time of year we would have out about the festival, but because this is kind of moving fast and ready, there's going to be information that may not come out at the same cadence that you're used to, and there's no other reason other than the fact that there are a lot of changes coming with this event, and a lot of those changes require us to work on things like a specific budget, getting specific proposals in to be able to inform some of the decisions that typically we would have made by now.
Just one. Yeah. Sorry. Like, I was asking the reorganization plans because, like, you know, it's publicly accessible information, the court documents, and all of that, and so I was just getting the information from there. But kind of turning away, I guess, from that is, have you talked to Flagstaff Pride at all about how their Pride event went this year? Because it was completely free, but they also scaled down a lot of what they did, and from what I understand, it was pretty successful. So they only did local headliners. Yeah, it was smaller than it normally was, but it was also successful from what I understand.
I'm not sure that, and I'm sure the staff can speak more to that, but we have not, I mean, it's happened just recently, but if somebody from Flagstaff Pride is willing to sit down and talk to the staff about that, I'm sure they'd be willing to talk to them. But I think it was stated before, in part of the process of this whole revamping of the festival, it is going to be looking at, obviously, how things are scaled down, but like what the community wants. And as Mike said it previously, the community has said they want it to go back into like more local entertainment, more local vendors, more things that are just local to Phoenix and like Phoenix proper, or maybe the state of Arizona. But you know, we are committed to looking at that. But if there's something that the Flagstaff Pride wants to help kind of give us guidance or advice, we'd be happy to hear them and what they had and what worked for them this year.
I think for us as an organization, that is a good indicator. Although it transpired before the bankruptcy process, it happened after we spoke to the community back in November, and we talked about the windfall, the shortfall that came about because of the costs that went into producing last year's Phoenix Pride Festival. But when we look at Rainbows Festival this year, we were in the situation we were already, and Rainbows Festival as a whole was a successful event. As far as the event, it was what it was budgeted to, we superseded the budgeted goals for that event. So our ability to produce an event that hits the goals that we're looking for, or whatever goals may be placed upon us, for us internally right now, we look at Rainbows Festival and its success this year as our ability to be able to successfully achieve this year's Phoenix Pride Festival.
I'm curious, with the emphasis on community, was it taking into consideration the selected date Pride Fest conflict with the Phoenix Leather Pride, which is a long-standing institution in the Phoenix leather community?
It was not done in a way to conflict with the events, but I will say that when you're working with venues, sometimes you're at the beholding of what they have available. For instance, when we think about the move that we did from moving the festival from the spring to the fall, the reason why we did that and we did it in November of that year, it was the first available date that we could get in. Being at the Arizona Center in October, trying to keep an event happening around the same time of year, the Arizona Center has multiple events that will be happening. Being that weekend was this weekend that we're doing this year was the only weekend that was available for us to execute the event, and still had the lead up time that was necessary in order to build the infrastructure necessary to have the event.
I know at previous Pride Festival years that there's been a space for 18-21 plus. Is that still going to happen this year?
Can I ask a clarifying question just to make sure I understand you correctly? When you say 18-21 plus, are you specifically speaking to VIP, the erotic world?
The erotic world.
The erotic world. This year we are working with, I actually have a meeting scheduled with someone who wants to take the lead and actually was our erotic world manager. One of the satellite events we're looking at is having an event at Apex.
Following up on that, with the emphasis on satellite sites, has any thought been given to those who lack either the transportation or the funds to go to numerous events?
Yes, one of the events that we actually kind of nailed down this week without spilling the full beans on what it is before we're able to announce, but one of those events includes a shuttle that will be free of charge to take individuals from the actual festival at the Arizona Center to that satellite event. So it is something that we're thinking about, and also recognizing that in having these satellite events that are meant to be for different portions of our community, we also should recognize that every single person isn't going to go to every single event, and we try everything that we can do to make sure that the events are located centrally in an area where either public transportation is going to be something that is accessible to them, which also informs where we choose to have the festival itself, and why Arizona Center was a great option this year, and why we've previously been at Steel Indian School Park.
And to that point too, I think from what I've heard from the staff so far, a lot of those events are around light rail adjacent areas, and you can ride the light rail for free with any downtown ticket. So you can use that ticket to get on the light rail for free and then just scoot your way around.
How is the board structuring the volunteer opportunities to meet more community members? For example, very few working class members have 4 hours to give. Why not offer smaller segments of volunteer time?
Can you repeat that?
No, in general, it's like 4-hour slots, but yeah, for an event. But very few working class people have just 4 hours they can give. It may be, you may be able to get more volunteers if you can do an hour, 2-hour events instead of having to commit to 4 hours.
You're talking about volunteers, not board, or are you talking about board? Oh, volunteers.
Volunteer shifts, not having them so long and maybe make them a little bit shorter for the work members.
Stella, do you want to answer that?
It's certainly something that can be looked at. It just kind of depends on what area and what the needs are, but it's certainly something that can be looked at. I mean, a 2-hour shift is something that's potentially doable depending on what the area is. I'm not sure, in all transparency, that somebody is going to want to come down just for an hour and then leave. I mean, if somebody wants to come down and volunteer for an hour and is committed to coming down for an hour and volunteering, then possibly. The attrition rate for volunteers is between 10 and 20%, and I see some people nodding that are used to working with volunteers. And so an hour I don't see as being realistic at all in all the years that I've done this, and I've worked with volunteers and done volunteer coordination at other nonprofits, and so I'm just being transparent. I really don't see that as being realistic. Maybe 2 hours, but in order to really get people to commit to a volunteer shift, I think 2 hours is the absolute minimum that is realistic. I think that the attrition rate would be much higher if the shift was only 1 hour. But 2 hours might be something on a case-by-case basis that I could talk to that person and see what the situation is. But 1 hour, I transparently, in the 20 plus years that I've been doing this, I don't see as being realistic.
Talking with organizations such as like Phoenix Food Bank, they actually do have shorter shifts for that reason, because yes, there is a lot of community who would volunteer, but they don't have that time to give. And like with Phoenix Food Bank, you're looking at shifts anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, and they get a lot of their volunteer needs met. So I don't think that it's quite as black and white as you might be thinking, that yeah, you do have people that would volunteer that time, because for a lot of people, depending on where you are in the valley, it's not just that hour, it's the half an hour to an hour that it takes to get to your volunteer site and then that same time back. So maybe they do have 3 hours, but they don't have 3 hours to give you as a volunteer.
And I appreciate that comment, and I understand what you're saying. I've actually volunteered at a few different food banks, and that is some hard work that is done there. And I appreciate people that do that, because gosh, that's tough. And like I said, I mean, it's certainly something that I'm willing to talk to people about and see what the needs are as far as people and their time, and what they have as far as their availability and that kind of thing, and look at it, like I said, on a case-by-case basis.
Can I ask another clarifying question, specifically because the way I'm understanding the original question around the 4 hours, were you speaking to as it relates to how if someone volunteers at least 4 hours, they get free entry into the festival? Was it specifically for that, or just general volunteering?
No, general volunteering.
So again, I go back to the point when I think about what people have a wealth of in order to give. Right now, some of that wealth that we can use that could be an hour or 2 hours of time is knowledge of understanding and sitting down and being a part of something like the Community Advisory Board, or sitting and talking with one of us when we have a conversation, and like obviously you're a part of the leather community and you're speaking up on behalf of the leather community. If there are things that we can do to better engage the leather community, and an individual only has an hour of time, let's sit down and have a conversation with that hour of time. Let's brainstorm together with that hour or two of time that you may have, because just like it comes to service, there's many ways to serve. And for that person, their wealth, they're giving us that 1 hour, that's their time. That is, if that 1 hour is all they can give, we value and respect that. But maybe it's a way of finding where that is best plugged in at. Maybe being at an event is not the best opportunity to utilize that individual.
Okay.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And that's kind of what I was saying about having that conversation on a case-by-case basis, because Landon's exactly right. That case-by-case basis may not be volunteering at an event, because it takes a half hour, an hour to get to the event, and a half hour to an hour to get home. So maybe that is being on a community advisory board and being able to meet virtually. Maybe that's joining a board committee and having those virtual meetings, and then maybe periodically through that board committee coming out and being a part of something once a quarter or once every 6 months or something like that, but still being a part of a conversation every month and being able to do it virtually, versus having to physically show up at an event for 4 hours or something like that. Time, talent, and treasure don't always fit into a box. We can make that look all sorts of different ways. It's not a box. And so being able to have that conversation and have that dialogue and see where somebody can fit in looks all sorts of different ways.
Okay.
And I just want to add to that, just because we've talked a lot about our committees, I just want to speak to a little bit of that accessibility piece. all of our committees meet either once a month or once every other month. They're usually an hour, and they're always by Zoom or Teams or whatever, and they usually don't start until 6 or 7 p.m. So if you're thinking about other ways to be involved, and we all have to work, that's something that we all try to be aware of, all of the committee chairs, when it comes to scheduling our meetings.
And I think we only have a few minutes left, so we want to be mindful of time. If there's maybe one last question or so. No?
For the opportunity to serve on the board, for the give get, has it been given to again, back to what people have available to give, has it been thought to perhaps offer an opportunity to do that in service rather than in monetary contribution?
We have talked about that, and that's something that in kind of our talks we have mentioned that that's something that we could offer, and that's partly what our governance committee is going to be looking at. When we did our call to committees, one of the things that we needed the most was people to serve on our governance committee, which looks over all of our bylaws, which looks over, which helps with getting people on the board. And that's something that is on the list for us to look at on how that looks differently, especially in this day and age where there's where everything is so expensive, where people are scraping pennies to do just the bare essentials. So those are things, but obviously those are conversations that each individual needs to have. So if there is somebody that's interested in joining the board and they are hesitant because of that, having a conversation with myself, having conversation with anybody on the board is like the first step, because we don't know that that's a hindrance unless you tell us, and we can't help you with that unless you are completely upfront and saying, I really want to give you my time, my energy, my support. I have this to give, but I don't have this to give, and how can we kind of balance that out? It's a conversation we can have, and I know everybody on the board would be definitely open to have that. And like Jade said earlier, if they don't have the money to give, there's always ways either to give, to have an event or to piggyback on an event. Like Jonathan did his Turnabout show, and I, helped him, and I was one of the performers in doing that. And so I gave my time to his event. So there are ways we can do that, but the conversation needs to happen. Those people need to be up front when they say, I want to be involved. I can only do this. How can you help me get to, from A to B? We can definitely have those conversations. So I think we are probably at time. So I, on behalf of the board and on behalf of the staff, want to thank everybody that showed up today. I want to thank everybody that showed up online. And as we said at the beginning, we will try to be as transparent as we can regarding the bankruptcy piece of it. There are things that we can and we cannot divulge. And there are times that we're going to need to go back to our legal representation and ask what we can and can't divulge, but we are going to try to be as transparent as we can through the process. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. And please look to our social media, to our newsletter, to our website for more information on the Phoenix Pride Festival and Parade that will happen in October. And we wish everybody a safe ride home and a real good night. Thank you.